Petri De Beer is an award-winning winemaker and agricultural economist. Petri, how are you doing? Could you tell us a little bit about how you got interested in your PhD work after doing your master's degree in wine chemistry?
I did my MSc in enology. I ended up being quite working a lot with the Shiraz SA forum in South Africa. Mm-hmm. So there I got quite a lot of technical knowledge, and then I started my journey in the winemaking kind of industry in South Africa, where I very quickly realized that technical proficiency in winemaking is not enough.
Okay.
And I think that is kind of a step ahead of a lot of the other agricultural industries, because we do work with the whole value chain. And as they are starting to realize now, and I think the wine industry is a bit ahead on that looking at individual parts of the industry does not guarantee success. And you can see it with the kind of dwindling margins of a lot of the agricultural industries. So while I was working in the wine industry, I decided I have to kind of get a bigger picture of the wine industry, not just locally, but globally also. So I started studying agricultural economics, obviously focusing on the South African wine industry. Mm-hmm. And I did my honors in agricultural economics, focusing on international trade trends, or trying to identify international trade trends that affect the South African wine industry the most. Mm-hmm. Quite interesting data coming from that. I worked, basically took Professor Kim Anderson from Australia's data that he compiles this kind of compendium of the wine industry, I think every 5 years or so, which has there's quite a lot of knowledge of the industry in there. So using that as my starting point, as kind of analyzing what big things in international trade and the international wine industry does have the biggest effect on the South African wine trade and kind of internationally. And what I found was quite interesting, that the American wine market does have the biggest, indirectly has the biggest effect on the South African wine industry, how much we export, how much we produce, mostly because they are just such a big wine market. Mm-hmm. That although they're not our biggest kind of export partner, mm-hmm. our biggest is still Europe at the moment, and especially UK and so forth, that the US demand for wine, if it's up really a lot, it kind of drains the whole world market of wine. So it indirectly, that the European producers export to the US, so then there's a kind of shortage in the European market. So it creates a gap for South Africa. So our production kind of goes, yeah,
wow,
goes up, which was quite interesting to see that they're just so big. And it will be interesting to see the effect of that the Chinese wine market will have in the coming years, although they are ramping up their own production. You know, I haven't looked at it yet, but seeing how much it would affect it. And then I kind of started with my PhD on the long-term economic viability of organic farming in a South African kind of context, especially focusing on Stellenbosch, because as I've seen with these kind of trade, international trade stuff, is that there's a lot of outside factors that influence whether something is really sustainable outside of what is my yield that I can get off of it. Because farmers do like to talk about, okay, I'm having a good year, I have 10 tons a hectare yield, or it's bad year, I have 6 tons a hectare yield. And then just actually looking at the numbers, because when talking about sustainability, they always kind of talk of the three pillars of sustainability: economic sustainability, ecological sustainability, and social sustainability.
Exactly.
Of those three, the only one that has definitive guidelines is economic sustainability. You measure it over the shortest time also. It's 1 year, financial year, you do your books, and it's very easy to see are you sustainable or not, because usually the bank manager will let you know you're losing money, you're in trouble, or you're fine, you're making money. But the other ones are a bit more nuanced, like defining what is ecological sustainability or what is social sustainability. So I found that there's a lot of kind of not almost infighting, but discussions around where the parameters should be set on that. And there, I think when I can go into a bit more detail a bit later on that. That's one of your big kind of things you have to look at, is as the industry is getting more formalized, kind of moving into the mainstream, where those parameters are going to finally settle down.
Exactly. I think that the main issue here is that the urgency of climate change and how we now see this effect in crops and many other things, of course, is pushing the priority towards environmental sustainability. But if a business is not economically sustainable, then there's no way you can keep up with the standards for social and environmental sustainability, right?
Yes, I think you do run the risk, and you see it a lot with kind of sustainability measures, because the economic sustainability is the easiest to measure and over the shortest time. It does get priority, and you get kind of this lopsided. I've read an economist once describe it as a kind of Mickey Mouse sustainability, where, because usually how they draw sustainability, this kind of three pillar sustainability is the three circles next to each other in equal parts, interconnecting, and then you kind of drew it with two little circles that say social and economic sustainability, and this big one that says economic sustainability, because you really run the risk of falling into that trap where that your short-term kind of vision of what is sustainable gets overshadowed by your economics.